Pursuant to Clause 2 of Rule 9, the gentlewoman from Michigan, Ms. McLean, and the gentleman from Massachusetts, Mr. McGovern, each will control 30 minutes. The chair recognizes the woman from Michigan.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. On September 30th,
Gentlelady will suspend. The House is not in order. Please take your conversations off the floor. Gentlelady may continue.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. On September 30th, as the House of Representatives met to consider legislation to avoid a government shutdown, Representative Jamaal Bowman of New York knowingly pulled a fire alarm to cause chaos and stop the House from doing its business. This is a felony, plain and simple. It's not difficult to understand. Capitol Police was forced to waste resources in investigating rather than doing their job to keep the Capitol safe. USCP determined Bowman broke the law, and he was indicted by the Attorney General of the District of Columbia. Realizing no number of excuses could get him out of this, Mr. Bowman pled guilty. As a former principal of the Cornerstone Academy for Social Action in New York City, Mr. Bowman should know the consequences of pulling a fire alarm to cause panic. In New York schools, the policy is clear. When a student commits a crime on campus, police are called, and that student is either suspended or expelled. One would think Representative Bowman would be able to hold himself to the same standards as he held his students to. I don't think that's a lot to ask. The Republican majority held our own former member accountable after the House Ethics Committee found he engaged in criminal behavior. It would be hypocritical for the House Democrats to not join us in holding one of their own members accountable who actually pled guilty to breaking the law. I do not submit this resolution lightly. Mr. Speaker, Article 1, Section 5 of our Constitution gives the House the solemn responsibility to discipline members for disorderly behavior, and as conviction demonstrates, Representative Bowman sought to cause panic to delay official proceedings of this House. I urge my fellow members to vote yes on my resolution and to hold our colleagues accountable for when they break the law. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I reserve.
Gentlelady reserves. Gentleman from Massachusetts is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, I yield myself such time as I may consume.
Gentleman's recognized.
Mr. Speaker, this is a profoundly stupid resolution. Under Republican control, this chamber has become a place where trivial issues get debated passionately and important ones not at all. Republicans have focused more on censuring people in this Congress than passing bills that help people we represent or improving this country in any way. What a waste of time and money. They have turned this place into a joke. They came into the majority talking a big game, but have delivered nothing, not a single damn thing. They talk about passing this and passing that. All their hyper-partisan bills are going nowhere. What we're now doing is distracting from the fact that the Republican agenda has been a total and complete failure. The least productive Congress in history, the most rules failed in a single year. They dragged America to the brink of default twice, almost shut down the government, wasted weeks fighting about who should be Speaker, hitting each other in the hallways, and it's all because we should be talking about important issues in this chamber, Mr. Speaker. We should be addressing health care costs, helping Americans build economic security, competing with our adversaries abroad, and investing in our people at home. We just had a shooting in Las Vegas tonight. We should be talking about preventing gun violence in this country. And you have us here talking about how someone tried to go out the wrong door of the Cannon House office building. I mean, honestly, what the hell is wrong with you? Congressman Bowman apologized, and I want to read his statement so we can be clear about what we're talking about here today. Quote, "Today, as I was rushing to make a vote, I came to a door that usually is open for votes, but today would not open. I am embarrassed to admit that I activated the fire alarm, mistakenly thinking it would open the door. I regret this and sincerely apologize for any confusion this caused. He messed up, like many of us do every day. He was rushing to get to votes. And guess what? No one was hurt. No one's life was put in danger. Votes went on like nothing happened. Anyone who works here knows that a fire alarm going off across the street wouldn't impact votes going on here in the Capitol. And I find it terribly ironic that we are talking about censuring Mr. Bowman, yet we never censured any of our colleagues who tried to overturn the election on January 6th, or who failed to respond to a subpoena, or who put our national security in danger by storming a skiff with their phones. In fact, to the contrary, Mike Johnson, the new Speaker of the House, held a press conference yesterday about the January 6th video footage. Something he said stuck with me. Quote, "We have to blur some of the people's faces who participated in the events of that day because we don't want them to be retaliated against and charged by the DOJ." End quote. So just to be clear, Republicans want to protect the insurrectionists, shield them from accountability, the people who beat officers, kicked in doors, smashed windows, desecrated this building, and tried to take down our democracy. Not our doors, America's offices, America's windows, and this is America's building that Trump's mob defiled. Speaker Johnson wants to protect the mob, but has us here debating this absurd censure. What a pathetic exercise in retaliation and revenge. What a petty thing it is to bring this garbage to the floor. Sadly, it's just a typical week for this disgraceful Republican majority. With that, I reserve, Mr. Speaker.
Gentleman reserves. Gentlelady from Michigan is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And to use that logic, well, then all those people should have just said sorry and we'd move on, right? But no, we don't do that. And let me tell you, I take a little bit of offense to what the hell is wrong with me. I'll tell you, there's nothing wrong with me. I took an oath to defend the Constitution, and that's exactly what I'm going to do. Again, I'm not going to apologize for it. I'm going to hold the Constitution, and it's very simple. We really shouldn't even have this debate. If you break the law and you follow due process, there are consequences to your actions, even if you say sorry. So we can try all of the diversion tactics that we would like. It doesn't change the fact that someone broke the law and that someone should be held accountable. It is disappointing, Mr. Speaker, that their own party can't hold them accountable, that they have such hypocrisy. So with that, I yield 2 minutes to my friend from New York, Nicole Meliatakis.
Gentlelady is recognized for 2 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We all remember that day. It was September 30th, 2023 at 11:59 a.m. That was when the Democrats actually called for a motion to adjourn. It was a tactic to stop the vote from taking place when we were just 12 hours away from a government shutdown. It was also the day that the leader on the other side tried to give a speech to delay the vote even further. But perhaps the most egregious thing we saw was when one of the members, remember, we are members of Congress, and a member on the other side of the aisle would pull a fire alarm to disrupt proceedings. It was certainly an attempt to interfere with an official proceeding. Now, the speaker who spoke on his behalf said, no, he was rushing for a vote. In fact, that's what the statement from Mr. Bowman was, that he was rushing for a vote. Then why, after pulling that alarm, did he show up to vote an hour later? If he was such a rush to come to the Capitol to vote, why did it take him an hour to actually cast his vote? That's the question that he should be answering, because nothing else truly makes sense. And the bottom line here is that he was charged with a crime after an investigation by the police. He did break the law. He did plead guilty. And we need to hold that member accountable. That is why we have brought this resolution today. It is not pathetic. What's pathetic is somebody who's a grown adult pulling a fire alarm like they're in a high school. And as a high school principal, Mr. Bowman knows very well the old fire alarm trick. And there would be accountability for his students if they pulled the fire alarm. And so that is why we are here today, making sure that there is accountability. That's all that this is about, all right? It's not just accountability if Republicans do something. There's accountability if anyone in this chamber does something, commits a crime, pleads guilty, and that is what we're doing today. Thank you, and I yield back.
Gentlelady's time has expired. Gentlelady from Michigan reserves. The gentleman from Massachusetts is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, I yield 3 minutes to the gentleman from Massachusetts, the Democratic whip, Ms. Clark.
Gentlelady is recognized for 3 minutes.
I thank the gentleman for yielding. As we speak here today, conflicts are raging around the globe, and the American people have told us exactly what they want us to do. Democracy is under siege. Putin is salivating at the prospect that Republicans might abandon Ukraine. 70,000 child care centers are on the verge of shutting down because the GOP let vital funding expire. We don't even have a budget, despite the fact that we voted for those top-line numbers back in June. And this ridiculous censure is how the Republicans are spending the time of this chamber and the time of the American people. The MAGA majority should be embarrassed if they are still capable of shame. Republicans filed this censure the same day they decided to shield the identities of January 6 rioters. I do have to hand it to the majority. They have managed to both push an extreme agenda and be a do-nothing majority. They've done nothing to make families freer, safer, or more confident in their future. Instead, they have voted against lowering the cost of insulin, affordable housing, and gun safety. They've done nothing to promote freedom, but they do not miss an opportunity to vote for abortion bans, book bans, and tax cheats. Just last week, the majority's leadership said no to holding George Santos accountable after a motion to expel was made by the Republican chairman of the Ethics Commission. But today, they bring this to the floor. A censure isn't a substitute for a policy agenda. It isn't filler when you have nothing to offer the American people. Vote no on this sham resolution. I yield back.
Gentlelady yields back. Gentleman from Massachusetts reserves. Gentlelady from Michigan is recognized.
At this time, I yield 2 minutes to Mr. Burleson.
Gentleman is recognized for 2 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. You know, it was said by our friends on the other side of the aisle that this censure motion is profoundly stupid. Well, you know what's profoundly stupid is an adult man who has been elected as a member of Congress, held to a high esteem, pulling a fire alarm like a child, throwing a tantrum. But what's worse is that he violated the law. He broke the law when he did it. It wasn't just something to say, oh, I'm sorry. He broke the law because he wanted to obstruct the meeting of this body, the vote of this body. And you know, it's been talked about January 6 individuals. Had someone done that on January 6, they would have been put in jail. And the American people know it. They see that there's a double standard. They see that this side of the aisle cleans up its house. The other side is going to let people, who have committed crimes continue to sit in office. The other side of the aisle and the other side of the building is going to let someone who has taken bribes in the form of gold bars. Apparently, cash isn't good enough under Biden inflation. You know, for a Democratic member of the Senate to take cash is not enough. You have to take gold. Look, we clean up, and we have the standard on this side of the aisle, and the American people know it. The standard on this side of the aisle is high. What's clear today is the standard on that side of the aisle is not. And I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. Gentlelady reserved. Gentleman from Massachusetts is recognized.
Yeah, and Mr. Speaker, I'll say it again, this resolution is profoundly stupid. I yield now 3 minutes to the gentleman from New York, Mr. Bowman.
Thank you so much. Is recognized for 3 minutes.
Thank you so much, Mr. Speaker. It's painfully obvious to myself, my colleagues, and the American people that the Republican Party is deeply unserious and unable to legislate. Their censure resolution against me today continues to demonstrate their inability to govern and serve the American people. Over the last 3 years, I have tirelessly fought for my district and my constituents by bringing over $125 million to the district, helping save members of our community over $7 million, and resolving over 6,500 constituent casework issues. I've introduced over 50 bills, resolutions, and amendments, and had 2 bills on STEM education passed in the historic CHIPS and Science Act. Even today, as Republicans force a censure on me, I introduced a new bill, the College Athlete Right to Organize Act, to ensure college athletes get paid for their time and hard work. No matter the result of the censure vote tomorrow, my constituents know I will always continue to fight for them. Fighting for my district includes working to prevent a government shutdown. And just over 2 months ago, I was rushing to the Capitol to vote and prevent a Republican shutdown. When I tried to exit a door that I usually go through, it didn't open, and due to confusion and rush to go vote, I pulled the fire alarm. I immediately took responsibility and accountability for my actions and pled guilty. Immediately. The legal process on this matter has played out. In no way did I obstruct official proceedings. The vote took place, and Democrats were able to ensure we avoided a government shutdown. Unfortunately, Republicans are here trying to rehash an already litigated matter, a matter in which the Republican-controlled House Committee on Ethics decided not to proceed with any further investigation. This is an insult to the people I was elected to represent. Instead of passing meaningful legislation for the American people, some Republicans are using this censure to waste our time and money and to try and make you forget about all of the rights they want to destroy. They're trying to make you forget they want to take away your reproductive rights, your voting rights, your health care, your Social Security, and your Medicare. House Democrats have been trying to focus on and address the issues the American people care about. Can we please, 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 please address the affordability crisis?
1 minute.
Thank you.
Gentleman's recognized.
Millions of Americans are struggling to put food on the tables, pay their rent, and keep the electricity on. Can we address the issue of gun violence? Just this week, we broke the record for the most mass shootings in a year, and we've lost over 35,000 people due to gun violence. Can we address our crumbling public school infrastructure? Kids are learning in schools with asbestos, no air conditioning, and mold, and it's hurting their ability to learn, grow, and thrive. Can we put an end to our massive spending on weapons and war and instead invest in our communities and our kids? The number one thing I tried to do as a middle school principal and as an educator for 20 years was to teach my students when they made a mistake, they owned up to it, they took responsibility, and they held themselves accountable. That's exactly what I did, and yet we are still here. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. Gentleman from Massachusetts reserves.
Thank you.
Gentlelady from Michigan is recognized.
Thank you. And although your district may appreciate all of those accomplishments, are we supposed to just forget that the crime that you committed? So it doesn't work, in perhaps in education, maybe we should have studied a little harder, but if you commit a crime, there is a penalty to that crime. You don't get to say, but I committed a crime, but I did all these good things, so all these good things erase this crime over here. it doesn't work that way. And again, I will say that it's not profoundly stupid to hold up the Constitution. The left may believe holding up the rights of the Constitution is profoundly stupid. I don't believe we do. So I will again say that this hearing and this censure is not profoundly stupid. It's actually a hearing of where we followed the law. The other fact that I may want to correct, I'll correct the truth with maybe the other half of the truth, is immediately means right away. So when you say, I immediately took action, the incident occurred on September 30th. October 26th was when you pled guilty. So I think that's a little bit longer than immediately, but again, maybe math wasn't our best subject either. So with that, I yield 2 minutes to Mr. Jimenez.
Members are reminded to direct their remarks to the chair, and the gentleman is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise in support of this resolution. On September 30th, while the House considered crucial legislation to avoid a government shutdown, Representative Jamaal Bowman pulled a fire alarm to disrupt proceedings, a crime for which he pled guilty. Let me repeat that again, a crime for which he pled guilty. As a career firefighter who served for 25 years in the city of Miami, 9 of which I served as its chief, I know just how serious this is. Every time a firefighter responds to an alarm, they're placing themselves and the public at risk. While that's a risk that we're willing to take to protect life and property, we should never put our first responders and the public at risk by pulling a false alarm. In fact, in 2021, over 40 police and firefighters died and were killed while responding to an alarm. While Representative Bowman initially claimed he pulled the alarm thinking it would open a locked door, we know that was a blatant lie. After pulling the alarm, Representative Bowman can clearly be seen on camera ripping down the emergency exit signs and fleeing the scene. He had every opportunity to alert Capitol Police to his mistake, but chose not to. Had it been a simple mistake, I wouldn't be here. But it wasn't a simple mistake. It is disgraceful that a member of Congress who would go to such lengths to break the law and put first responders and the public at risk to prevent the House from voting to keep the government open so our federal workers can receive their paycheck. For obstructing the House, putting first responders and the public at risk, and breaking D.C. laws, Representative Bowman should be censured before the House. Thank you, and I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. Gentlelady reserves. The gentleman from Massachusetts is recognized.
Yeah, Mr. Speaker, the gentlelady talks about following the Constitution. Really? I mean, coming from that side, it's laughable to hear that. I mean, silence about the crimes of Donald Trump. Silence about what happened here on January 6th. Silence. You want to talk about opening a door? The people who stormed this place broke down doors trying to kill people. And silence. So I don't want to hear any lectures about upholding the Constitution. There's nothing but silence about the crimes of those who attacked this Capitol on January 6th. I yield 1 minute to the gentleman from Michigan, Ms. Stevens.
He is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise today to talk about my colleague, Mr. Jamaal Bowman, who I have the privilege of serving on 2 committees with in this very Congress, the Education and Labor Committee and the House Science, Space, and Technology Committee. I have seen Mr. Bowman fight for disability rights, for child care, for affordable prescription drugs, affordable housing. He has stood up to racism. He stood up to the attacks on public education, attacks on teachers, cuts to school nutrition. There is a unique and vital perspective Mr. Bowman brings to education issues in this Congress. In his freshman term, he served as a subcommittee chair for energy. He was a conference committee member on the CHIPS and Science Act, advocating for diversity, equity, and inclusion so that the jobs and profits could go to everyday Americans. This man does not deserve to be reprimanded. We should heed the leadership that he brings to education issues. He looks at AI and he asks, how can we solve the problems of tomorrow if we could all do such thing? Thank you, and I yield back.
Gentlelady yields back. Gentleman reserves. Gentlelady from Michigan is recognized.
Thank you. I yield now 3 minutes to Mr. Alford.
The gentleman is recognized for 3 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Look, I really don't take any joy in being here standing before you today to address this matter of grave concern. Mr. Speaker, this is not trivial. This is not stupid. This is profoundly important, the solemn duty that I do not take lightly. This is not personal. This is not partisan. It is to protect this very body. Representative Jamaal Bowman was criminally charged and pleaded guilty to falsely pulling a fire alarm. Now, while I applaud his confession, that doesn't mean this is without consequences. This act was not a mere lapse in judgment. It was not a mistake. It was not an accident. It was an intentional, calculated attempt to disrupt the very democratic process by halting a critical vote on this very floor, voting for government funding. And if you don't believe it, watch the video. So, what should our response be as a House to this willful act of obstruction? To this point, Mr. Speaker, nothing has been done. And this inaction sends a very dangerous message that a member of Congress can break the law and the norms of this institution to obstruct a vote without any consequences. We must rise above partisan politics and hold our own accountable. The integrity of our democratic process, the safety of our community, the trust of the American people, the function of this body demands nothing less. We cannot allow the reckless, calculated actions of one individual to overshadow the critical work that this body does. Now, I'm sure that Mr. Bowman is a fine representative for the people of his district. This is not a joyous day for anyone here on this side of the aisle. This is a sad day for this body. But it is an even sadder day if we do nothing about this egregious act. I recommend that the entire body vote yes for the censure. Thank you, and I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. Gentlelady reserves. Gentleman is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, let me just respond to the gentleman by saying if this isn't political or partisan, I don't know what the hell is. This is a pathetic display that we are seeing here on the House floor today. I now yield 1 1/2 minutes to the gentleman from California, the chairman of the Democratic Caucus, Mr. Aguilar.
I thank the gentleman for yielding, Mr. Speaker. I rise today in opposition to the resolution because House Democrats want a functioning House of Representatives. We're in the midst of the least productive Congress since the Great Depression. This historic dysfunction is what happens when extreme MAGA Republicans dictate the agenda. The majority is fixated on censures, expulsions, and impeachments. Meanwhile, the American public are worried about making ends meet. Where is the Republican urgency around lowering costs? Where are their solutions for their constituents worried about rent, groceries, and utilities? The truth is, they have no plan. They have no solutions. They're taking orders from the former president and being led by the most extreme members of their conference. But when House Democrats held a majority, we passed the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law, the Bipartisan Safer Communities Act, the Bipartisan Chips and Science Act, and the Inflation Reduction Act. These laws are creating good-paying jobs, lowering energy costs, and making schools safer in communities across this country. A vote for this resolution will further divide this body at a time when we should be coming together to make the needs of the American public front and center. I'm proud to stand with my colleague, Mr. Bowman of New York, and I urge a no vote. I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. Gentleman from Massachusetts reserves. Gentlelady from Michigan is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, how much time does each side have?
The gentlelady from Michigan has 17 minutes. The gentleman from Massachusetts has 16.5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I now yield as much time, 5 minutes, to Mr. Lawler.
The gentleman is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Last week, I joined my colleague Anthony D'Esposito in introducing a resolution to expel disgraced former Congressman George Santos. It was warranted. It was warranted because he defrauded the voters, he defrauded donors. He's facing a 23-count indictment. He did not belong in Congress. I was willing to take on a member of my own party and reduce our majority by one because he was unfit to serve. Now, as a congressman from the 17th District of New York, I share Westchester County with Mr. Bowman. I have gotten to know Mr. Bowman throughout the course of my tenure here in Congress. We've even flown home together to Westchester County Airport. What happened on September 30th was wrong. I'm sure he's embarrassed. He should be. As a former middle school principal, he understands the difference between a locked door and a fire alarm. To suggest somehow he was confused is laughable. As the video evidence shows, he did push the door, and it being locked, it didn't open. But he then took down the signs, threw one on the ground, carried one, walked over to the fire alarm on the wall, and pulled the fire alarm. It didn't say, pull to exit. It didn't say, in case of a locked door, open the fire alarm and the door will open. No, it said, in case of emergency, pull fire alarm. He then proceeded to throw the other sign on the ground and ran past 7 Capitol Hill police officers and did not utter one word about accidentally and embarrassingly pulling a fire alarm. And in fact, when the bolo went out and the Capitol Hill police came to question him about it, he lawyered up. He then went and met with Leader Jeffries. That's not taking accountability right away. That's not taking responsibility. And in fact, a few days after it happened, he called me directly to ask me, please don't get on a censure or an expulsion resolution. And I said to him, I will not do anything until I hear from the Capitol Hill police as to what happened. And he told me, oh, I won't be charged. They're dismissing it. I didn't do it. I didn't do anything. Well, they ended up referring it to prosecutors. He was charged, and he pled guilty. I don't think he should be expelled. I think what he did was wrong. I don't think it was an accident. It was absolutely done to disrupt a proceeding, as the Democrats were pulling all sorts of stunts that day, including walking single file in to vote by paper, even though they all had their electronic voting cards. Hakeem Jeffries doing his magic minute. We all know what it was. So let's be honest. Let's take accountability here. If you're taking accountability, then you should actually tell your colleagues, you know what? I did wrong. I accept the censure. Instead, you're sitting there smirking and laughing. I don't think your constituents think it's funny. In fact, I know they don't think it's funny. Because the amount of times I get calls from your constituents.
Gentleman's time has expired.
More minute.
An additional minute.
The amount of times I get calls from your constituents, the amount of times my office gets inundated with requests from your constituents, like when you shut your office down for 2 weeks in August, all offices shut down. You know how many cases we had to take on? Or Jewish constituents. No, it's not. Jewish constituents.
Order, gentleman's recognized.
Jewish constituents who don't feel that they can go to you for help. So they don't think it's funny. The people of Westchester County don't think it's funny. And so I encourage all of my colleagues to vote in favor of this censure. I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. Members are again reminded to direct their remarks to the chair. Gentlelady reserves. Gentleman from Massachusetts is recognized.
Let me just say to my Republican colleagues, are you listening to yourselves talk? I mean, we're in the House chamber. Heads of state address this body. We have debates about war and peace, and you're talking about a fire alarm? I mean, give me a break.
Suspend. Members are reminded to direct their remarks to the chair, please. The gentleman is recognized.
Yeah. Mr. Speaker, I will yield 2 minutes to the gentleman from New York, Mr. Ocasio-Cortez.
I think
gentlelady is recognized for 2 minutes.
I think the ranking member, Mr. Chair, I think the Republican side of the aisle made the case quite clearly today as to why we should not vote for censure. Right now, you can tell how weak their arguments are because they are grasping for straws, trying to do their best My Cousin Vinny impersonation as to breaking down what happened here with a fire alarm. Jamaal Bowman has more courage in his pinky finger than the entire Republican Party put together, more integrity than the entire Republican Party put together. And that's exactly why they're moving to censure him today. Let me tell you what's actually going on. New York Republicans are so embarrassed that they propped up George Santos, got him elected to office, and then had to turn around and vote to expel him, that they want to distract the entire world from their massive embarrassment. New York Republicans are so embarrassed that they have not accomplished a damn thing for New Yorkers this entire year, that they have to find a distraction. So they've decided to target one of the first black men to ever represent Westchester County in the United States Congress for censure. That is what today is about. And New York Republicans are so unfocused and so unable to make people's lives better that they've decided to bully their colleague. That's what today is about. They're wasting our time. They're wasting the country's time over some petty what rises to censure. I mean, truly, these arguments that are being made here, what's next? Jaywalking? Do you want to get us for jaywalking, for not crossing the street correctly? Is that what you're going to raise for censure next? This is truly ridiculous. It's beneath the character of the House, and it is beneath the stature and the status of what rises to consideration before this body. And with that, I yield back.
Lady yields back. Gentleman from Massachusetts reserves. Gentlelady from Michigan is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And I agree. I wish we didn't have to be here. We should, as most sports teams do, clean up our own locker room. That would be the best case scenario, like we actually did with a member of our body. We cleaned up our own locker room. It would be nice if the other side would clean up theirs. So I agree with you, Ms. Ocasio-Cortez, and I loved your My Cousin Vinny analogy. That was funny. But this isn't a funny thing. It was good, but this isn't funny. You committed a crime to try and disrupt a proceeding. If this isn't serious, I think it's a little more serious than jaywalking when you try and disrupt the business of the House. So with that, I wish we weren't here, because I wish you all would clean up your own locker room, and we could really get on to the people's business. We can do both, but with that, I yield at least 5 minutes to Representative Marjorie Taylor Greene.
The gentlelady is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you very much. On Saturday, September 30th, 2023, the House of Representatives was considering a continuing resolution to avoid a government shutdown. Minutes after the Democrat whip made a motion to adjourn, Jamaal Bowman decided to pull a fire alarm. He pulled that fire alarm intentionally, willfully, and knew exactly what he was doing. This happened in the Cannon House office building where my office is located. I happened to be in my office when he pulled the fire alarm. This caused the Cannon building to be evacuated, and my staff and I could not return to our office for several hours. Once the fire alarm was pulled, the elevators shut down, and it made it very difficult for everyone to leave the building, especially if they are handicapped. People had to go down the stairs in order to exit as the fire alarm was blaring. Not only that, all the staff had to leave. They were not allowed to re-enter for a very long time. Capitol Police were scrambling, trying to figure out what had happened, if there was a fire, if there was a threat to our safety and our security, and they had to go into investigation immediately in order to understand why the fire alarm was going. Jamaal Bowman did not tell the Capitol Police that he pulled the fire alarm, even though he admitted himself that when he makes a mistake, that he would tell his own students, if you've made a mistake, own up to it and take accountability. Jamaal Bowman had plenty of opportunity to admit his mistake and take accountability for his own actions. He should have told Capitol Police immediately that he made a mistake, as he claimed. But it wasn't a mistake, Mr. Speaker. It was on purpose, it was intentional, and it was all in part to play the games and the shenanigans that the Democrats were pulling that day as they were trying to block the continuing resolution that was being considered on the House floor. Remember, the fire alarm was pulled minutes after the Democrat whip made a motion to adjourn. But more importantly, he was intentionally playing his part to obstruct an official proceeding. By the way, this is the same thing that has been used against January 6 defendants and is still being used to this day. They are being locked up, held pre-trial detention, and being prosecuted by the Department of Justice nearly 3 years later for obstructing an official proceeding, which is exactly what a member of Congress did, Jamaal Bowman did, on September 30th. But yet we have a two-tiered justice system in Washington, D.C. And while regular people who walked into the Capitol, by the way, nonviolent offenders, many of them walked in open doors, and some of them also standing out on the lawn, never entering the Capitol, are all being charged for obstructing an official proceeding. But yet Jamaal Bowman says, oh, it was a mistake and he should get a pass, and his colleagues make excuses for them and call us unserious. You know what's unserious? Having a justice system that doesn't hold everyone accountable and treat people the same way. This is an outrage, and this is a disgrace on this institution and this body. For someone that is a former principal who punished his own students for intentionally pulling fire alarms to make up petty excuses and think that his own constituents and the American people will buy his lies is a slap in the face to his voters, the people that he represents, and this entire country, and every single one of us that serve in this body. I would also add that if anyone is going to be charged and forced to remain in jail, forced to be serving prison time for obstructing an official proceeding, then Jamaal Bowman should face the exact same fate for every single January 6th defendant. Mr. Speaker, I urge all of my colleagues to vote for this censure resolution. I thank Representative McClain for introducing it, and at this time I yield back. Thank you.
Gentlelady yields back. A gentlelady from Michigan reserves. Gentleman from Massachusetts is recognized.
Yeah. Mr. Speaker, it's really rich to get a lecture from someone about civility who stood on this House floor and screamed and interrupted the President of the United States during his State of the Union, or somebody who continues to circle the wagons and cheer on the insurrectionists who attacked this Capitol violently on January 6th. I was the last person off the House floor on that day, and I saw what happened. And for people to come down here and defend those actions, it is pathetic and disgusting. I now yield 1.5 minutes to the gentlewoman from Michigan, Ms. Tlaib.
Gentlelady is recognized for 1.5 minutes.
So desperate. Y'all so desperate to distract from the fact that you all have nothing to improve the lives of the American people or end the ongoing genocide. So now you're trying to shift the focus by baselessly attacking Rep. Bowman to score cheap political points, comparing him to the white supremacist on January 6th who are smashing windows in the Capitol, y'all, and screaming, "Hang Mike Pence." Give me a break. Your inability to govern is so obvious to the American people. Y'all can't even find enough Republicans to vote, pass a budget, or even keep a speaker. This is yet another attempt to silence a person of color in this chamber. We all see it. This is all about the fact that Representative Bowman calls out your hypocrisy. Leave him alone. Get a grip. Do something that will actually improve the lives of the American people that you all represent. Vote no on this cheap political stunt. I yield.
Gentlelady yields back. Gentleman reserves. Gentlelady from Michigan is recognized.
I would just like to remind you, Mr. Speaker, that we talk about baseless claims. If I'm not mistaken, Capitol Police did an investigation, referred it to the District of Columbia that did an investigation, and Representative Bowman pled guilty to a crime. I don't think that's baseless. In fact, I think that is basis for crime. And that is basis for this censure, because baseless means you have no cause, Mr. Speaker. And I think the mere fact that Mr. Bowman pled guilty isn't baseless, it is basis for a crime. So with that, I reserve, sir.
Gentlelady reserves. The chair would once again remind all members on both sides of the aisle to direct their remarks to the chair and not to each other in the second person. Gentleman is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, I yield 1 minute to the gentleman from New York, the Democratic leader, Mr. Jeffries.
Gentleman is recognized for 1 minute.
Mr. Speaker, I rise today in strong opposition to this fake, fraudulent, and fictitious censure resolution. The proceedings here on the House of Representatives have been a complete and total embarrassment. Extreme MAGA Republicans have stooped to a new low, and that is very difficult based on the events that have taken place under this Republican majority throughout this year. Jamaal Bowman has taken public responsibility for the fire alarm incident. He's apologized, explained the circumstances under which it has occurred. He's been held publicly accountable by the D.C. Superior Court, paid a $1,000 fine, and the Ethics Committee, on a bipartisan basis, here in this Congress, made clear that no further action was required. The Ethics Committee, under a Republican chair. So why is the author of this resolution and the extreme MAGA Republicans on the floor of the House wasting time and taxpayer resources, trying to undermine the credibility of Jamaal Bowman, someone who is doing his best to serve his constituents? including in some of the poorest sections of the Bronx, and extreme MAGA Republicans on the floor with this sad and silly charade. Now, the extreme MAGA Republicans have said, including the author of this resolution, that this is about law and order. Give us a break. All you've done is demonstrate throughout the years, including on January 6th and thereafter, that you're not the party of law and order. Extreme MAGA Republicans are the party of lawlessness and disorder. As a matter of fact, the author of this resolution has endorsed Donald Trump. Multiple indictments. Someone who undertook a crime wave over and over and over again, proudly smirking now that she stands behind Donald Trump and then wants to communicate to us that this is about law and order, when you are the party of lawlessness and disorder. In fact, the author of this resolution voted to overturn the will of the American people on January 6th. And you know what? Came back like the majority of her extreme MAGA Republican colleagues after the violent insurrection, after the Capitol was overrun by a violent mob, after more than 100 Capitol police officers were seriously injured, and then voted still. Not for law and order, not for accountability, not for the Constitution. You voted with the insurrectionists. Lawlessness and disorder. Give us a break lecturing us about the Constitution and law and order. Your own record suggests that's a phony argument. Nobody is buying it. The American people aren't buying it. The people of Michigan, we will make sure, won't buy it. Now, extreme MAGA Republicans, it's been very interesting to watch this debate, acting like detectives on the House floor. Extreme MAGA Republicans pretending to be Perry Mason. Extreme MAGA Republicans pretending to be Matlock. Extreme MAGA Republicans pretending to be Cagney and Lacey. Not even worthy of being held to the standard of Inspector Gadget and Ace Ventura Pet Detective. That's how embarrassing your display on the House floor has been. But this is a serious matter. You have now, this is a serious matter. Your behavior on the House floor is a serious matter. And I have the floor. I have the floor. Your behavior, the behavior of the extreme MAGA Republicans, censuring member after member after member, has brought disgrace to the institution, to the House of Representatives. This behavior has brought disgrace, not the underlying censure. There's been accountability in the ways that we've all described. The effort to weaponize the censure. What happened, Mr. Speaker, to civility, to trying to foster an environment where we can solve problems on behalf of the American people? We don't take these arguments of civility seriously because the overwhelming majority of the extreme MAGA Republican conference supports the violent insurrectionists and supports the insurrectionist in chief, twice impeached, under federal indictment, repeatedly for breaking the law and violating the Constitution. So we're here on the House floor because extreme MAGA Republicans have no plan. Extreme MAGA Republicans have no policies. Extreme MAGA Republicans have made no progress for hardworking American taxpayers on any issue. And so you're here to try to distract. We're not going to let it happen. We're not going to let extreme MAGA Republicans distract the people of Michigan, distract the people of New York, distract the people of America. We're on the House floor, wasting time talking about fire alarms. not the economy, not inflation, not affordable housing, not lowering costs, not the gun violence epidemic that continues to claim the lives of our young people all across America. Extreme MAGA Republicans have us on the House floor talking about fire alarms. How silly is that under these circumstances? Social Security is under assault. Medicare is under assault. Reproductive freedom is under assault. The Affordable Care Act is under assault. Democracy itself is under assault. And extreme MAGA Republicans are wasting time on the House floor talking about fire alarms under these circumstances, embarrassing themselves. It's petty, it's pathetic, and it's petulant. Now, House Democrats have said from the very beginning of this Congress that we will find bipartisan common ground with our Republican colleagues on any issue, whenever and wherever necessary, in order to make life better for the American people, on any issue. But we will push back against Republican extremism whenever necessary. And you've crossed a line once again. And we will call out MAGA extremism in the loudest, strongest, most direct way possible. And if you're going to continue this extreme MAGA Republican, do-nothing Republican Congress, which has done nothing to improve the lives of American people all over the land, this do-nothing Republican Congress, which has failed to solve a single problem on behalf of hardworking American taxpayers, this do-nothing Republican Congress, which has failed to do a single thing to improve the quality of life of the American people. If extreme MAGA Republicans are going to continue to try to weaponize the censure as is being done on this floor right now, going after Democrats repeatedly, week after week after week, because you have nothing better to do, then I volunteer. Censure me next. Censure me next. That's how worthless your censure effort is. It has no credibility, no integrity, no legitimacy. Censure me next. And I'll take that censure and I'll wear it next week, next month, next year like a badge of honor. Go home, sleep well, and say to myself, today was a good day. I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. Gentleman from Massachusetts reserves. Gentlelady from Michigan is recognized.
Therein lies the problem. So as one of your so-called MAGA Republicans, who again, I don't apologize for, because under MAGA Republican leadership, I might remind everybody, crime was down. Crime was up. Crime was down under the last administration. Clearly, crime was down. Inflation was up. All of these problems that we're dealing with in this Congress today, Mr. Speaker, is created by the Biden administration and created by my friends on the left. That's the truth. That's the facts. Talk to me about how many, under the MAGA Republicans, how many wars were we fighting overseas? 0. What was the crime rate? Down. Again, we have some serious problems since the Democrats took office and this administration took office. And therein lies the problem. And you want to talk about law and order. And you want to talk about Cagney and Lacey and Ace Ventura. That's cute. That's cute. You want to talk about, Mr. Speaker, a disgrace to this body? Doing investigative work and actually following due process? That's what we're supposed to do. That's what I thought we did. And I will not apologize for following law and order. But under the Democrats' law and order, you shouldn't go through any investigation. You should just, on a whim, do some impeachment. That's what the other side of the aisle does. We clean up our locker room, but when you commit a crime, it's unfortunate that we have to bring this to the table. So as much as you want to compare us and call us names, you can continue to do that, but the facts speak for themselves. We waited till an investigation was completed before we brought this censure resolution. We didn't do it on a whim. That's law and order. And if that's Cagney and Lacey following due process, perhaps, Mr. Speaker, my friends on the other side of the aisle could use a little investigative and reporting themselves and some detective work themselves. So with that, I reserve for the closing. What is the time remaining, ma'am?
The lady has 1 minute remaining. The other side. Gentleman has 11 and a half minutes, and gentleman is recognized.
Yeah, Mr. Speaker, oh my goodness, I had trouble following the gentlelady. I mean, crime was up or down in the last administration. The one thing I can say with certainty is that crime was way up in the White House in the last administration, without a doubt. I now yield 1 minute to the gentleman from Florida, Mr. Frost.
Gentleman is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. You know, I grew up not understanding why people didn't hold Congress in a high regard throughout the country. But I can just imagine the people turning on C-SPAN, turning on the news, hearing the arguments that we're hearing from the other side of the aisle, and then it just makes sense to me. I mean, let's recap what the American people have witnessed over the last few years. A member who physically assaulted a colleague, a Republican member who tried to bring a gun on the House floor, a Republican colleague who brought January 6 insurrectionists into the Capitol. This is the least productive Congress that we've had since the Great Depression, and this entire party is pushing us towards a shutdown and economics collapse daily. But it's Congressman Bowman, who's a thoughtful former educator and staunch defender of democracy, who they want to censure. What a pathetic waste of time. No wonder half of this country doesn't vote when they turn on the TV and see their leaders wasting time like this. We need more educators in Congress like Congressman Bowman, not less. And maybe if we had some more educators here, they'd be able to give my Republican colleagues a class on how to truly govern. Thank you. I yield back.
Gentleman's time has expired. Gentleman reserved. Gentlelady continues reserved. Gentleman from Massachusetts is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, I'm proud to yield 1 minute to the gentlewoman from Washington State, Ms. Jayapal.
Gentlelady is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Congressman Bowman is a brilliant, committed, progressive member who has dedicated his life to equity and opportunity for kids. He is a leader in economics, education, and racial justice. He is a leader of the Green New Deal for public schools and legislation to pay artists what they're worth. He made a mistake. He apologized. He paid the fine. The Ethics Committee declined to further investigate this matter. That should be the end of this. But what are we doing here? Republicans would rather waste time with political stunts and demonizing a black member. They want you to forget that they want to strip your health care from Americans. They want you to forget that they want to cut Social Security and Medicare, the two most important and trusted programs in the country. They want you to forget that they are denying election results on that side, your right to vote. Anything to distract from what they are really doing, that's what they're doing right now. There is nothing to show for the majority but chaos, infighting, and cruelty. And I just have to end with this.
Just a few
Gentlelady's time has
I
expired.
yield the gentlelady 30 seconds.
Just a few weeks ago, Congressman Chip Roy stood on the floor of this chamber and called for his fellow Republican colleagues to, quote, come explain to me one meaningful, significant thing the Republican majority has done. The answer is obvious: nothing. Oppose this resolution.
Gentlelady yields back. Gentlelady continues to reserve. Gentleman from Massachusetts is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, I yield 1 minute to the gentleman from Michigan, Ms. Omar.
Gentlelady is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Ranking Member. It is understandable why the author of this censure doesn't know what is up and what is down, because obviously someone who wants to talk about crime supports a former president currently running for president that is facing 91 federal and state indictments. It is clear she doesn't know what is up and down, because we sit on the Education and Labor Committee together talking about how she wants to help our kids, but all she wants to do is criminalize their ability to exist as individuals. It makes sense that she doesn't know what is up and down, because she keeps talking about accountability, and she doesn't understand that criminal charges are accountability. Pleading guilty is taking accountability. That is what the gentleman has done. The only reason we are here is because she wants more time on camera. It is to make sure there is an ability to send a fundraiser asking for money. This censure is not necessary because this gentleman has already been held accountable.
Gentleman reserves. Gentlelady continues to reserve. No, gentlelady's recognized.
We need to be accountable to this body.
Gentlelady reserves. Gentleman is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, I'm happy to yield 1 minute to the gentlewoman from Massachusetts, Ms. Presley.
Gentlelady is recognized for 1 minute.
Mr. Speaker, I rise in strong opposition to the censure of Representative Jamaal Bowman. This is yet another predictable but no less wasteful action. Congressman Bowman has taken accountability for his mistake, and even Republicans on the Ethics Committee agree that this is a waste of time. We've got 99 problems, but a functional government of the Republican majority is not one of them. Republicans are disconnected, dysfunctional, discriminating, and a disappointment to the American people. They can't pass a bill to fund our public schools, but they will bring this resolution to attack Congressman Bowman, a champion for students, a lifelong educator, a duly elected member of Congress, and a strong black man. He honors the legacy of the many brilliant black men that came before him. A quick history lesson. We are approaching the anniversary of when Joseph Rainey became the first black member of the U.S. House of Representatives in December of 1870. Just like Jamaal Bowman, he fought for public education and civil rights, and he had to deal with double standards and racism in Congress. This censure is just the latest in this chamber's racist history of telling black men that they don't belong in Congress. To the black men of this nation, know that you belong everywhere. Jamaal Bowman is
time has expired.
Another 30 seconds.
Gentlelady's recognized for an additional 30 seconds.
Him, and I urge my colleagues to vote no on this resolution.
Gentlelady yields back. Gentleman reserves. Gentlelady reserves. Gentleman is recognized.
I yield a minute and a half to the gentlewoman from Missouri, Ms. Bush.
Gentlelady is recognized for 90 seconds.
St. Louis and I rise because we are tired of extreme Republican antics that seek to put politics over the needs of people. Under Republican leadership, the House has successfully passed just 14 bills. Some of these were bills to punt an impending government shutdown, which we all know was only avoided thanks to the Democrats. And let us not forget that their complete and utter inability to govern resulted in an entire chamber of Congress from being able to perform its basic duties for 17 days, 17 failed speaker votes, and multiple failed speaker candidates. their house is not in order. Republicans haven't delivered on any top public priorities like strengthening Social Security, delivering environmental protections, or boosting our economy. Politically motivated censures like this one that target Black and brown members of Congress, like this one, are not only a waste of time, they are a distraction. The people aren't falling for it. Republicans should actually legislate rather than play useless political games like this attempt to censure Representative Jamaal Bowman. I yield back.
Yields back. Gentleman reserves. Gentlelady continues to reserve. Gentleman from Massachusetts is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, I'm prepared to close.
Okay. Gentleman is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, I want to apologize to the American people. I want to apologize that Republicans are wasting your hard-earned taxpayer money with yet another stupid and meaningless censure resolution instead of doing anything that will help the American people. Jamaal Bowman is a good man, a decent man, a kind man. He was rushing to exit a House office building so he could go vote, and he activated a fire alarm in the process of trying to open the door. Did he destroy government property? No. Did he obstruct an official proceeding? No. Did he wield a deadly weapon? No. Did he assault or injure anyone? No. But did he apologize and take responsibility for his actions? Yes, he did. Which is more than we can say for January 6th, when this building was desecrated by an angry mob sent by Trump to overturn an election. And Republican members of this body still act like nothing happened. How disgusting. How offensive it is to the men and women who protect us that my friends on the other side of the aisle continue to act like nothing happened that day. Look, at the end of the day, this has nothing to do with Congressman Bowman, and my friends know that. It is about deflecting from how unhinged this majority is. They had to expel one of their own members last week, for God's sake. The first speaker in history to be ousted. Nothing of any consequence to show for an entire year in the majority. Nothing. You have done nothing. You've wasted time on stupid measures like this. Nothing. Look, this whole exercise is just nuts. For Republicans, it's all about appeasing their orange overlord at Mar-a-Lago who can do no wrong. They don't care about governing. They aren't fit to govern. They aren't concerned about the serious and complex issues facing this country, the world, or the people we represent. For them, being in power is all about retaliation and revenge, and the destruction of their perceived enemies. It is time for the Republican Party to grow up. Mr. Speaker, I don't want to waste another second on this meaningless resolution. This is pathetic. The Republicans have turned this chamber into a place where trivial issues get debated passionately and important ones not at all. My friends have done nothing, not a damn thing, for the people that they say they represent. How can anybody on the other side of the aisle go home with a straight face and say that you're representing your constituents? You produce nothing for them. You've turned this place into a joke. It is sad that we are here today, and again, I will end as I began by apologizing to the American people. I urge a no vote on this pathetic, stupid resolution, and I yield back my time.
Gentleman yields back. Gentlelady from Michigan is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And in case my colleagues on the other side of the aisle need clarification, I want to make it clear. The American people know that they are not better off than they were 4 years ago. And they know it's Democrats in this Congress and the White House that have put them in this anguish as we see today. Just to clear things up. We've heard from congressional Democrats is excuse after excuse for Representative Bowman's criminal behavior. I dare say, Mr. Speaker, that if a Republican did what Mr. Bowman did, that every single member on the Democratic side would be down here calling for censure, if not expulsion. Mr. Bowman himself, despite pleading guilty, said it was an accident. How? Someone looks at a sign that says fire and thinks,
Gentlelady's time has expired.
I wonder what this will do. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I urge everyone to vote yes.
Without objection, the previous question is ordered on the resolution. The question is on adoption of the resolution. Those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. No. The ayes have it.
Mr. Speaker.
The gentleman from Massachusetts is recognized.
I asked for the yeas and nays, and maybe you need a hearing aid.
The yeas and nays requested. Those favoring a vote from the yeas and nays will rise. A sufficient number having risen, the yeas and nays are ordered. Pursuant to Clause 8 of Rule 20, further proceedings on this question are postponed. The chair lays before the House a sundry communication.
The Honorable, the Speaker, House of Representatives, sir. I am writing to inform you of my intent to leave my seat on the House Committee on Transportation and Infrastructure following my recent appointment to the Committee on Armed Services. Signed sincerely, Lance Gooden, Member of Congress. The Honorable, the Speaker, House of Representatives, sir. Following my appointment to the House Committee on Appropriations for the 118th Congress, I hereby resign from the House Committee on Oversight and Accountability for the 118th Congress, effective today. Signed sincerely, Chuck Edwards, Member of Congress. The Honorable, the Speaker, House of Representatives, sir. Following my appointment to the House Committee on Appropriations for the 118th Congress, I hereby resign from the House Committee on Transportation and Infrastructure and the House Committee on the Budget for the 118th Congress, effective today. Signed sincerely, Chuck Edwards, Member of Congress. The Honorable, the Speaker, House of Representatives, sir. I respectfully inform the House Republican Conference that I resign my membership on the Committee on Oversight and Accountability for the remainder of the 118th Congress, effective immediately. It has been an honor and a privilege to serve on the committee under the leadership of Chairman Comer. I am proud of the committee's accomplishments and look forward to continuing this important work on behalf of the American people. Signed sincerely, Kelly Armstrong, Member of Congress.
Without objection, the resignations are accepted. For what purpose does the gentlewoman from Michigan seek recognition?
Mr. Speaker, by the direction of the House Republican Conference, I send to the desk a privileged resolution and ask for its immediate consideration.
The clerk will report the resolution.
House Resolution 913, resolved that the following members be and are hereby elected to the following standing committees of the House of Representatives. Committee on Appropriations, Mr. Edwards.
The clerk will suspend.
Mr. Speaker,
for what purpose does the gentlewoman from Michigan seek recognition?
I ask unanimous consent to dispense with the reading.
Without objection. The resolution is agreed to, and the motion to reconsider is laid upon the table. For what purpose does the gentlewoman from Michigan seek recognition?
Mr. Speaker, I ask unanimous consent that the clerk be authorized to make technical corrections in the endorsement of H.R. 5933 to include corrections in spelling, punctuation, section numbering, and cross-referencing, and the insertion of appropriate headings.
Without objection. For what purpose does a gentleman from Michigan seek recognition?
Mr. Speaker, I ask unanimous consent that when the House adjourns today, it adjourn to meet at 9 a.m. tomorrow.
Without objection.